Hello and welcome back to Perfect Jacket, and in this exciting episode I will be making this red jacket and chatting a little bit about pattern matching. So without further ado, here is how I made the jacket step by step. So as you can see, the tweed has a very clear pattern, so yeah, pattern matching required. And most commercial dressmakers, when they're making a jacket out of plaid, they sort of fold the fabric in half and then just spend about 10 minutes matching, very carefully matching both layers so that they exactly match the pattern, and then they cut, the left and right side together as you normally do. But I'm not doing this commercially, I'm just making the jacket for me. So I've decided that it might be easier just to open the entire piece of tweed out and do a piece at a time. So here we are. I've previously cut out my backing fabric, which is this netting, which you can just buy at any bulk big fabric store. The tweeds I tend to buy at exclusive boutiques, like small businesses where they carry luxury tweeds, mostly European. But this netting is available at big box stores like Joann's. So yeah, because it's so big and cheap, relatively cheap and bulky, the stores that carry the good silk for the lining and the good tweeds probably won't be the same stores where you get this synthetic horsehair type textile. So anyway, so I've got that, and I cut out all the pattern pieces for my backing, and yeah, instead of pinning the pieces on, I've just put the backing on, but you could also put your pieces on here. I prefer, because the backing is quite transparent, I just feel like this is easier for me to work with. So yeah, I've pinned each piece, and I'm careful so I have a very clear left side and a right side. Sorry, I don't know my left from my right. This one's the left. I have a very clear left side and right side. So yeah, I'm very careful to make sure I cut out the correct side as well. So yeah, and this way I just know where my marks are and I've lined them up perfectly. So yeah, if you haven't used the pattern before, then it would be more helpful to use the pattern pieces, because I actually have the markings for the pattern line on the pieces, whereas the backing obviously doesn't. I've got cuts in the side of each piece, but you probably can't see them on the video. So yeah, this is how I'm going to pattern match. I'm not really into pattern matching, but I thought I'd just give a vague nod to it at least. So yeah, this is me cutting out the pieces. And once you've cut out all the pieces, it's time to pin them all together. Once you've pinned along all the sew lines for the body of the jacket and for the sleeves, it's time to get the sewing machine out and sew those seam lines. I mean, if you don't have a sewing machine, you could do it by hand. People will actually think your garment is better if you do it by hand, but lazy people like me tend to use the sewing machine for all the long seams. So I'll do that now. Once you've sewn all the panels on the body of the jacket and the sleeves together, so they're all sewn together, then you have to sew the tops of the front of the jacket and the back of the jacket together. So first just pin them on both sides, and then sew that line and just make sure that it's straight. So I'll do that now. Okay, they have both been sewn. Now the next step is to pin back all the seam allowances on each of the panels on the body of the jacket and on the sleeves, and hand stitch those down. And you want to do this by hand because it looks better and feels better. And the whole point of a Chanel jacket or Chanel type jacket is that it's luxurious, and the more hand stitching you do, the more luxurious your jacket will look. So now we just do every single seam, hand sew those, and then once that's done, you also need to hand stitch the backing fabric to the tweed. So I'll do the seam allowances, and don't cut them down. As you get older, in a decade or two, you might want to let out some of the seam allowance, and just make the jacket a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, so you don't know how you're going to need to change the fit of your jacket in the next decade or two, or if you sell it, you want the next person to be able to fit the jacket perfectly to themselves as well. So when there's a decent seam allowance with every single panel, it just allows you so much freedom. So that's with fast fashion, you basically don't get any seams. What they want you to do is just keep buying new clothes and throwing out, you know, the clothes after 5 or 6 wears. But yeah, keep the large seam allowance, and that way you'll be able to keep the item of clothing for a very long time. Okay, so I'll do the hand sewing now. Okay, I've finished stitching down the seam allowances for all the panels on the body and the sleeves. The next step is to hand stitch the backing fabric to the tweed on all the panels. So I've just started pinning the sew lines. For the smaller panels, which is most panels, I just do 2 lines, but on the larger panels, such as the back, middle, the center back panel, I tend to do 3 stitch lines, or sometimes 4. And for the upper side of the sleeve, it's a large panel, so I also do 3 rows on that. So I'll do that now, but just before that, I think we'll put the body of the jacket on the dress form and check out how well the pattern matching went. Okay, here we go. Well, I mean, the pattern matching isn't perfect, but it's not too shabby. And I've just sort of tucked under the front 2 panels of the lining there, so that's why it's a bit bulky at the center. But yeah, it's not too shabby, especially once you consider this entire jacket has been made with just 1 yard of fabric. So that's why I don't normally use heavy patterns, tweeds with very obvious heavy patterns, because it's just, you sort of have to make the choice for yourself. Do you want to buy 2.5 times as much fabric as you actually need and just cut out the pieces so that you pattern match perfectly and throw a lot of waste into landfill? Or do you want to just buy the fabric that you need, and sort of, you know, your design isn't going to be entirely perfect? But I mean, these are the only scraps I have from the yard I bought. They're all tiny pieces, so I think I did quite well on the pattern matching, considering. And I really just make jackets so that I can use them as a canvas to make the beaded trim and use up my epic bead collection. So you've just got to decide what's important to you. I mean, if you're fans of Lee Alexander McQueen or Vivienne Westwood and their amazing pattern matching with tartans, I'll put up some pictures. Oh my gosh, their work is phenomenal. So if that's the road you want to go down, then absolutely I can see the point of that. But just for a general jacket that I'm only going to be wearing at business meetings, this is good enough for me. So yeah, now I will continue with my hand stitching, I have to attach the backing fabric to the actual tweed. So I'll do that now, and I'll put up in some pictures of Alexander McQueen tweeds and tartans, and that gorgeous jacket where Vivienne Westwood pattern matches to perfection. So I have finished stitching the tweed to the backing fabric on the torso of the jacket and both the arms. Now it's time to set the sleeves, which is a fancy way of saying putting the sleeves in. But before I do that, it's easier to just stitch the hem down and the cuffs down now. So I'll do that and then I'll set the sleeves. There we go. I have hemmed the cuffs and the body of the jacket. Now it is time to set those sleeves. So I'll pin them in place. Okay, I've stitched on the 2 sleeves and turned the jacket out the right way. And I've also tucked under the front 2 panels of the lining. So, but I haven't stitched them down yet. So that's why it's a bit bulky in the middle and uneven in the middle there. But let's just focus on the shoulders. And yeah, they both look the same. Each time you attach the sleeves, because most people are either left-handed or right-handed, you'll be good at one sleeve, but the other one will sort of look a bit sad. So you might have to do that second one a couple of times before you get them looking the same. So yeah, just check there's no, if there's minor imperfections, then that's fine, because you can fix them. The next stage is stitching the seam to the inside of the sleeves. So anything minor is fine, but if it's major, like a pucker or a pleat where there shouldn't be one, then you're gonna have to pull it apart and re-stitch. So we'll just turn it around and look at the back. Yeah, it's looking good at the back too. Nice. Okay, so yeah, this is good enough to go on with. Now Gabrielle Chanel, when she used to make jackets, she used to do them herself. She used to set the sleeves, and she was such a perfectionist. It was quite common for her to rip the seam out, the sleeve out, and do it again up to 12 times. So if you're a perfectionist too, and you want to be just like Coco Chanel, go for it. But for me, I know how many sort of tiny imperfections I can smooth out in the next part of the process when I'm hand stitching down the seams of the sleeves. And yeah, this is good enough for me. But yeah, you're welcome to waste days and days on your sleeves if you want to. But for now, I'm just going to take this off the dress form and turn it back inside out and stitch down the seams into the sleeves very carefully so that I don't wreck what I've got going on here. Okay. And when you're stitching down the seams, obviously on the bottom half, you have to trim down as much of that seam allowance as you can, and with the remaining you just put notches, cut notches in there, so that yeah, the smallest amount of seam allowance that you can is better on areas like on rounded areas, and under the arms, just for ease of movement. So yeah, do that first, and then with the remaining seam allowance, stitch it down. Now, normally I trim the seam allowance down, then cut the notches, but the camera just does not pick up my notches when I do it that way. So I've just cut the notches first to show you what I mean, And now I'll go back and trim the excess down from the underarm. Okay, so I trimmed the underarm down by about half. I watched a couple of videos recently and people were complaining that their sleeves were falling off, or that they've got big holes in the arms. So yeah, don't completely cut your seam allowance down to nothing. That's not the idea at all. And also, yeah, do reinforce your stitching. If you are too scared to go over your stitching with your machine because you think it might wreck your sleeves, then just do it with hand stitching. And yeah, I think part of it might be the way that they're wearing the jackets. If you're gonna do a cartwheel, maybe take your jacket off first, or maybe don't wear a Chanel jacket when you're doing cartwheels. I'm not sure what they were doing, but yeah, just do be careful. But you know, also just wear the jacket like it's supposed to be worn, I suppose. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I just saw a couple of videos in a row where people were complaining about the exact same thing. So I don't really know enough about those sewers to know what they've done. But yeah, I don't know, guard against that however you can, I guess. So yeah, now I will stitch down the seam allowance on both sides. Okay, seam allowance stitched down. I was thinking about those other people who made jackets and then wrapped the back of the sleeves of them. I think part of the problem is making jackets that don't have lining. So yeah, if you're going to bother making a jacket, you may as well line it. I don't really understand why you wouldn't. But anyway, the sleeve's done. Next, I'll just leave this on the dress form, and next up is the lining. And here we have the lining for the jacket. It's silk, and it's a much finer silk than I normally use, but this year I've decided I'm not going to buy any more silk until I use up what I have. And yeah, I definitely recommend you use a more robust medium weight silk, not an ultra lightweight one like this. But as I said, I'm just using up all my silk, and this is going to be one of those jackets I just wear to business meetings and then come straight home and get changed. So it will last. This really lightweight lining will last at least 5 or 10 years, and then by then I'll replace it with something else. So yeah, I like to wear my jackets for 5 or 10 years and then replace all the beading anyway. So, you know, I'll be renovating it by that time anyway. So yeah, so basically you construct the lining the same way you did the jacket. Sew all the pieces together. First of all, you have to sew the yoke and the center back pieces together, then sew everything else together, then attach the sleeves. And once that's done, it's time to attach the lining to the outer jacket, and we'll do that now. Oh my gosh, I love this lining with this particular tweed. They are such a good match. Okay, so I've attached the silk section of the lining to the rest of the jacket, so we're all one big garment now. Well, small garment now. So the next step is to do the collar. So I've got to turn the entire thing inside out. So we have the right facing tweed with the right facing silk, and then we'll work on once we're in the interior, we will stitch down the collar. So we'll turn everything inside out now. Okay, the collar is pinned, and now I just have to stitch around here. It's a little hard going around curves, and this is relentlessly curved the whole way around. What you have to watch for is just to make sure that the curve on this side perfectly mirrors the curve on this side, because everyone's going to see the front collar of your jacket. So if you mess it up, just unpick it and do it again. It's got to be a nice smooth sew line. So yeah, that's what you're looking for when you do this. So yeah, I'll do that now. Okay, collar done. I've actually gone over it twice, but it's directly over the top, so you can't really tell. So the next step is to cut down the seam allowance by 2/3 and then put in some notches just so that it will sit well when it's turned out the correct way. Because yeah, you cut it down to reduce bulk, and then the notches are, because it's a curve, you always do notches just so that it sits well. So I'll do that now and then I'll turn it out. Okay, jacket turned in the right way again, and now I've pushed out the corners so that they sit properly, and now I've pinned along the bottom of the front panel, pinned along the edges right around the collar and back down again. Now we just have to top stitch all those layers together at the edge so that everything sits well. Okay, top stitching done. The next step, if you're doing a beaded trim, then you need to leave the silk, the lining hem open so that you can get in between the layers and sew the beaded trim on. But if you're not going to do beaded trim, then you need another way to weight your jacket. So first of all, just hem your lining and also do the cuffs, the inside of those. And once that's done, you just sew a little weight along the bottom, which is usually a chain, jewelry chain, just to give it some weight so that the back of your jacket sits properly. But yeah, I'm going to leave mine as it is at the moment. And my next step is to make the beaded trim for it. So yeah, really happy with this jacket. I mean, the pattern matching isn't completely perfect, but it's pretty good considering this is merely 1 yard of fabric. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video and thank you for watching.